Hello, my little sea biscuits. How are you all doing? It's been a while, hasn't it? I will explain. However, before I do that, I would just like to give you a quick kind of briefing and overview of what we're going to cover today. I thought I would show you the little hamlet where I live here in France. And also I'd like to show you a house of disrepute which used to serve this little hamlet, which is quite amazing because at its heyday it would have had about 25 residents living here, and for some reason that justified a whorehouse. In case you don't know where France is, it's a large country situated off the south coast of England and is populated by a high number of French-speaking individuals. We live in a very quiet and sleepy part of France, a department called Corrèze. Not many people have heard of Corrèze. Even a lot of French haven't heard of Corrèze. Welcome to our little hamlet, La Villa. Origins of the name La Villa, I'm not actually entirely sure. I've looked it up, I've done a bit of research, I've asked locals, nobody seems to know. But as far as I can tell or deduce, it derives from the name for villa or large house. There's no evidence of a large house in the hamlet, so that's a bit of a mystery, so maybe that's not true. But anyway, welcome to La Villa. That didn't work very well, did it? What's the difference between a village and a hamlet, you may ask, because I asked the very same question. Well, apparently, a village has to have some kind of central point to it, i.e. a church, a village hall, or something like that. I think it's partly due to population as well, because I think there's sort of a limit to how many people can live in a hamlet before it becomes a village. I'm not sure. La Villa does not have a church. We do not have any kind of central point or central location for the community, so we are a hamlet. There we go. And there's not many people that live here anyway. In fact, in total there are 14 people, including myself, Vero and Helena. So it's a very small little place indeed. This is the main entrance to La Villa. It's actually there's a loop road that runs all the way around it, which I'm going to walk you around today. But this is the entrance that we tend to use to get to our house. I won't take you down the main entrance to the loop road. I'll take you around the back road, because I think it's a kind of a nicer approach to where we live. So this is then the second entrance. Lovely old farm buildings there in the background. There's no farming that actually goes on in this particular hamlet anymore, which is quite sad. Most of the inhabitants are certainly over 70. We are the youngest inhabitants here, and sadly that means there's no other children apart from Helena. This all changes because a lot of the houses in the hamlet are kind of holiday homes, which means that in the school holidays the families come here on holiday, and of course they bring their kids, which is great for Helena. Then she's got kind of a little gang of children to play with. This is the village notice board, where they stick up all the various notices and flyers and things like that. Of course, there's not much going on at the moment. What never ceases to amaze me about the buildings here is that the stone walls, the mortar that they used, is actually mud. It's a mixture of mud and cow manure. It's crazy. And they hold up these, well, this isn't a particularly big wall, but they hold up some big buildings. Well, that one, for example. This is a holiday home. Another holiday home here, up here. This next house, she's probably going to talk to me, is owned by the Arivis. They're an elderly couple. This guy here is called Roger. Bonjour. Ça va? Oui, je sais. Hein? C'est comme ça. Oui, 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 merci. Hein? Bon courage. Hein? Au revoir. And this house here, the lady passed away, sadly, last week. And I guess her son will be using it as a holiday home. So yes, the hamlet of La Villa is on its decline, that's for sure. Beautiful house though. One thing I've always liked, and I've found fascinating in the UK as well as in France, is when you visit these old villages and places, is when you come across these little local passageways and paths that have been used for centuries and centuries. And in many ways, because the use of the village has changed, maybe those paths and passageways and alleys aren't used in the same way, or they might not be used at all. But I make a point of keeping this one usable, because I actually cut the grass of a Belgian family who live, well, I'm going to show you in a moment anyway. So when I cut their grass, I just make a point of cutting back the grass on this particular little passageway, because it's so it's charming. That's the only word for it. It's absolutely charming. I'll show you. Let's go down there. So as I was saying, now we've got to the bottom of the path, which kind of leads to the edge of a garden, which I maintain for a Belgian family just here. In fact, I've just finished trimming their garden. It's huge and it takes me about 3 days in total. It's a real challenge, to say the least. But while we're here, and I guess this particular trackway, this pathway would have been a shortcut down to the main road, which is just down here. On the subject of schools, way down there, I think you just see that building. That is also a small local school. It didn't serve Le Vieillard, that served the next hamlet across, which I'll show you in a moment. The place is called Jonchère. So back in the day, even each largish hamlet had its own school, which I find quite incredible. Here we go, yet another holiday home. So back in the day here in Corrèze, most houses came equipped with an outdoor bread oven. And they're quite beautiful things actually. Some have been restored, but sadly a lot of them have fallen into disrepair, which is sad, but I guess there is quite a bit of maintenance involved. But this particular bread oven just behind me is a fantastic example. And the owner of this house, who is a lovely guy, and he's got a lovely family with 2 children that Helena gets on with really well, he's promised me that at some point in the next year or so, he's going to fire up the bread oven. And where's my hand? Yes, he's going to fire up the bread oven so that we can try and cook some bread in it, which I thought would be quite a nice experience. I'll give you a bit of a closer look. Moving on. Oh yeah, actually there's something else I want to show you which is particularly special about this house. Well, I think it's quite special anyway. It's this little water feature which is fed by the local source. How fantastic is this? This is one of the original barns from one of the farms here. Again, don't forget that these were held up with mortar made of mud. Now you get a better idea of the scale of the building. Incredible. This has got to be one of the prettiest veg plots that I've ever seen. Gorgeous. This again is a holiday home. And at the back of this barn here, well, you can just see there's another house which is lived in by a couple called Roger and Josette. Very nice elderly couple. And now we're heading up to our sector of the village. It's a bit of a steep climb, this. I'm unfit as well, but it is quite steep, so bear with me while I catch my breath. Walked up this road many a time in the early hours of the morning after an evening of festivities with some of the locals. As I mentioned earlier, there's another small hamlet just on the other side of the hill. You can just see it and get past these trees. There we go. See, now that's called Jonchère, and the school that I showed you earlier on, the school building, I think you can just see it from here. You can just see it. As if I can point to it. It's around there. That was the school building for this particular hamlet. Incredible that such a small community would justify its own school building. The house is owned by our neighbours. Oh, there's our friendly horse. Yes, our neighbours, Robert and Mary Magdalene, lovely couple. We had a really wet winter here last year, and a lot of these stone walls just gave way. Had lots of kind of landslides or small landslides which collapsed a lot of the stone walls, frustratingly. And then of course we get to our little house, which is the newest house. Very much modelled on a traditional Corresian house. In fact, a few people have asked us if it was a restoration, which is nice to hear. I guess that means we've done a good job of it. And of course it wasn't restoration. Before this was just a field, and that's it. Our tour hasn't finished. We will continue with the loop, and I'll take you past our English neighbour's house. And then I will show you the building that used to be the school for this particular hamlet. This little trackway just here, which I started this video from, is called, well, roughly translated, it's called the Yellow Road, which I kind of always find a bit funny. It always reminds me of the Wizard of Oz. Follow the yellow brick road, follow the yellow brick road. It got its name not because of, well, as you can see, this beautiful broom which grows in abundance in this area, but it got its name actually from the sandy soil here. This doesn't look particularly yellow today, but in the right light it does. And if you follow this pathway, this trackway, I've not taken you there yet. I will do actually in my next film, the one that I've had to postpone. That leads to a place that we call the Enchanted Valley, which is another piece of land that we own, which is basically a small valley with a stream and a waterfall. It's gorgeous. But this path, this yellow road, leads you directly to there, which is rather lovely. And we kind of continued with the path down to our house. This caravan here, by the way, which is ours, and it's been parked on the the land ever since we started building. Well, before we started building, it was donated by the grandparents of Vero, and the plan initially was to live in the caravan. I don't know what we were thinking, because it would never have worked. I think we stayed in it for about, or at least a weekend. Mind you, Vero was heavily pregnant with Vero at the time. Start again. Vero was heavily pregnant with Helena at the time. No, she wasn't. I'm lying. Just ignore that. Ignore that. But we did. We lived in it for about a weekend, but it was completely impractical, and it's kind of just stayed here ever since. I don't really know what to do with it. I don't want to get rid of it, because it's kind of, well, as I say, because it came from Vero's grandparents. Her granddad died since then, and her grandmother's in a bit of a bad way. Maybe I should just paint it green. I've been thinking about painting it green and doing some kind of art on it. Make it look a bit like a hippie caravan, maybe. However, that might be a bit unpopular with the locals. We will see. I don't know. The jury's out on that for the moment. We're now heading down to the site of the famous Rusty Cockerel. If you click on the link here, you will know what I'm talking about. The Rusty Cockerel. The cockerel I saved from rust and revamped and repainted without the knowledge of our neighbours who owned said cockerel. So this house here is owned by Michel and his wife Danielle. He used to be a postman. He's now retired. He's the guy that owns the horse that made that poo that's right there. Again, I have introduced the horse on a previous vlog. There's another one of these bread ovens I was talking about. So our English neighbours live here, Jim and Fee. This is a closer look at Michel's house, Michel and Danielle, the ancient postman and the horse owner. And finally, this building here was the original school for La Villa, and is now occupied and is now inhabited by a lady called Maria. And Maria's daughter still lives here at La Villa, and she lives in this house just there.
Oh yes, and one last thing. The House of Disrepute I told you about at the beginning of this film. It was situated just outside of the hamlet, and sadly, it's no more. It was one of our neighbours that told us about this particular house. It was occupied by one prostitute in the 30s and 40s. Nobody actually knows what happened to the prostitute. The house was abandoned in the 50s and eventually collapsed. All that's actually left of the house now are these earthworks. I located one photograph of the house, which was taken in 1936.
There we go. There's one of the steps that would have led up to this house of disrepute. The local whorehouse. Yes, indeed, the house of the local whore. The local pute, as they would say in French. Crazy, eh? That there'd be a whorehouse here, serving, well, certainly the hamlet of La Villa, where we live, which probably had a population of, I don't know, I guess 24, 25 people in its heyday. But saying that, I guess, because it's on this, well, it's not really a main road, but it's like a local road which leads up to other small villages and hamlets. So many ways, I guess it was quite well situated. But odd to think, eh, that this at one time would have had men queuing at the door to relieve themselves in a modest kind of way.
A lot of the stones were robbed out from the ruin of the house, some of which were used to build this wall at the entrance of our hamlet. I bet those stones have seen some things and can tell some stories.
So there we go. There's a quick tour of our little hamlet here in France. Now you know, don't you? Now you know it all.
I've asked residents if they've got any old photographs that have been taken of the hamlet in the past. The reply that I've been given is, what do you want to look at photos for? It hasn't changed.